Welcome back to the Four Podmen, the wrestling podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. We're also available on Anchor, so if you prefer Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you pick up your audio podcast, you'll also find us there. And tonight we have a special show tonight where we're going to be looking at our Mount Rushmore of tag teams. And joining me tonight, we have, as always, my brothers in arms, the D-O-double-G, the Road Dog Jason Kennedy, my man. And of course, the manager of the Four Podmen, JJ Dean. How are you, Dean?
Oh, good, my man.
And also joining me tonight, the Beef, Joe Duignan. Joe, how are you?
I'm all good, pal. Sweating because I was trying to spend so long trying to log into this bloody thing. Like,
it's okay.
Tonight.
You got there in the end, so that's the main thing. And as you can see, one of our OGs is missing. The podfather of the Dynamo Podcast Network is recouping this week, but he'll be back next week, no doubt. Shout out to Ian Kelly. Hope you're doing well. So tonight's episode, lads, it's the Mount Rushmore of tag teams, but we put a little bit of a twist on it because we said what we do is it would be an impossible task to pick just 4 tag teams out of 3 to 4 errors, if you like. So what we said was we would take our Mount Rushmore for the NWA WCW era. We would take 4 tag teams from the WWF era and 4 tag teams from the WWE era. And that would make up the basis of our Mount Rushmore, if you like, 3 Mount Rushmores. So we're supposed to we'll start off with the NWA WCW one. Joe, you kick us off there and give us your 4.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure you guys know, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners / viewers know, I fucking love tag team wrestling. So this is my baby. That's why I was sweating trying to get into this bloody thing, because I couldn't miss this show. Had to be here for tag team stuff. So I'm going to kick things off, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has these guys down. But I kicked off things with the Rock and Roll Express. Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton. Look, these guys massively influential. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have the Rockers, you wouldn't have the Hardy Boys, and you wouldn't have the Young Bucks. They just wouldn't exist without them. They were huge innovators, and stupidly popular everywhere they went. People went bananas for them. Ricky Morton, I don't know if there's ever been a better seller in wrestling than him. Just unbelievable at garnering sympathy from the audience and making you believe that he was in the shit and up shit creek, and as I said, just massively influential, just hugely over. You couldn't leave them off any list, really, to be honest.
Right, give us your number 2.
So after that, it's hard to mention the Rock and Roll Express without mentioning the antithesis to them, which of course is the Midnight Express, who, once again, these guys were as influential, but in the opposite. They were unbelievably hated, caused riots nearly everywhere they went. They had Jim Cornette in there, of course, antagonizing the bejesus out of everyone around him. They as I said, they caused riots and that kind of crack. And there were a few members. There was I think Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton were probably the main 2. But then there's Stan Lane came in a little bit after that for Condrey. But as I said, regardless of the combination, they were just hated everywhere they went. And I know WWE tried to rehash them with, but they had Bob Holly and Bart Gunn, 2 decent wrestlers, but what were they thinking? Every time they've tried to rehash a tag team, it's never ever worked. You had the New Heart Foundation as well, which was a disaster, and I think they did it with the Guns, didn't they? Or not the Guns? Oh, who am I thinking of? Is it the Blackjacks? Is it
Blackjacks? They did it with LOD.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Anytime they tried to rehash these things, it's never worked.
Yeah.
Sorry, but the Midnight Express was another one I had. After that, I have Harlem Heat, record-breaking tag team reigns at 10. Stevie Ray and Booker T. once again, regardless of what they did, whether they were heels when they first started out, and or when they were faces, they were phenomenal together. So that was my third team, and then after that, like how can you mention WCW tag teams without mentioning the Steiners? You know, so that was my fourth team. Once again, two guys, unbelievably athletic, unbelievably powerful. If you know, they could get into the ring and out wrestle absolutely anybody that was put in front of them if they wanted to. As I said, like for their size, especially Scott, ridiculously athletic. Everyone knows the Frankensteiner, like, and like for a man that size to be doing that kind of stuff was just nonsense. Really, you know what I mean? Even the way he used to do leapfrogs, huge air he could get off them. He just unbelievable athlete. And of course, Rick was more understated than Scott, but he was as good a wrestler. Maybe not quite as athletic as his brother, but he was just as good a wrestler. So they were my four picks for the NWA WCW era of things.
Four very good picks. Two teams that made the blonde mullet cool, and one that making tennis rackets cool isn't for everyone. And then of course Scott with his brother, the dog-faced gremlin as they used to call him. Jay, give us your four.
I wouldn't be now. Again, WCW wouldn't be my forte, but listen, cream rises to the top regardless of which particular era. There's certain names that'll always get bandied about, and there's bound to be a little overlap here, and I guess that's just a testament to how men worked in a time when, let's just say, the standard work rate in the world of professional wrestling was exceptional across the bar. There was men who even just went one step further, and again, overlap. The Steiners, I just think they were phenomenal to watch. When Scott Steiner's the little of the two in any tag team, you've got to stop and have a little look at the corner again to see who the hot tag is. You know what I mean? That man has made a series singles career off being a big mofo who can run his mouth talking shit and always entertain. But when he's tagging somebody else in to clean out the ring, there's definitely something going on in the corner that's worth watching. And for me, the Steiners were just, there was a lot of charisma for big men as well. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of big men tag teams don't necessarily communicate that well, but I always found the Steiners a hell of a promo and just very entertaining to watch. The second, I suppose I should have omitted these simply because of common sense and being who they were, but this was more of a throwback to the NWA days, I suppose. Road Warriors all day long. There's very few things in this industry where everybody has to shut up and agree on, and there's probably only one thing that I can think of straight to mind when you ask who's the best who ever did it in a tag situation. You'd have to ask 100 people to find one person to disagree with the Road Warriors, and I include them in the WCW thing because LOD are LOD, and we know them and we know who they are and what they were over there, but they went a finished product, and it was very rare that company brought in something so over from another company and actually lauded them to the degree that they deserved. Usually what we know with Vince and the company is, if you're bringing in a hot ticket from another show, do your best to destroy them simply so that they can't work anywhere else, and whatever you have, cloning them is the best. And there was no shortage of attempted clones of the two boys. But again, big men with a charisma which far defied logic. Like, I mean, I could listen to Hawk and Animal talk all day. Now, not so much Animal. Animal was a hell of a worker, and how quickly he could crisscross those ropes. Just, you need to see it to believe it. And man, that size moving so quick. And again, when Hawk is the one reaching for the hot tag, like, what is going on in the world? Like, anywhere else, he's the behemoth. That's Godzilla stomping down Tokyo. But like the man said, what a rush. The third one, this is a bit of a fanboy one for me with the WCW thing. When two pieces of your wrestling life come together from different aspects and different eras, and then you realize they started in the same place in the same melting pot, and you go back and watch it and it's not shit. It's really fun when that happens. Usually when something like this happens, you have to overcompensate for it. And for me, Doom, when you got two big bruisers who standing drop kicks, punches. There was a rugged aspect. It was almost like they were a more earthy Legion of Doom, but with less of the pomp and ceremony. Do you know what I mean? Okay, fair enough. They had the masks, but being a kid marking out for Butch Reed so many years ago, there was only two men in that company who wore yellow, and we know one of them stayed around a lot longer than the other. But the other one, in a respect, was almost like there was a lot of similarities. Only his shtick, his talk was a lot more street. It was a lot more sensical as opposed to the nonsense the other fella spoke. But always been a Butch Reed fan. Again, rest in peace, another recent there. But when you stick in with a young up-and-comer like Ron Bleeding Simmons, who goes on to become who he is, like, you can't find a better pairing of legacy. You've got the first 20 years of the perfect aspect of the business linking up with the next hot 20 years, and in the middle they're sitting there for a couple of years in the tag division of WCW, which was like, they had a strong tag division for a long while. I suppose my fourth one would be
you forgot to throw in El Woman there as well.
Yeah, she's a hot topic. I'm sure she'll get a show sometime. But it's Nancy was easy to look at. There's no question about it. And again, when you got those two bruisers, perfect. It's perfect legacy wrestling for me. Like I said, the early part of me wrestling fandom linking up with the mid to later part of me wrestling fandom, and even all the way up to the damn segments. If one word from the fella is all you need from him to be entertained, that's a hell of a thing. Like, damn. He ties in all of those loose end fucking Tarantino-esque backstage sequences. He's just, we're waiting on you. Damn. It's like, yeah, we got it. Now move swiftly on to something less entertaining. But the fourth one, I have to admit, was again, it's more of a curio than I never followed their career, and I won't boast that I did. But I do often, with a few drinks on me in front of the telly and the network, hop on to look a little back at the Hollywood Blondes. I think there was a situation there. We didn't know who one was going to be, and all eyes were on the other fella, and rightly so. I see a lot of what latter-day Vince wanted from Dean Ambrose in Brian Pillman. Do you know, that wild, crazy, just nonsensical, shaggy-haired fucking lunatic with a roughhouse style who could also, some of that man's moves were poetry. He had it all. I know he came off the gridiron. I know he was a former player, but Jesus, he took to the sport real quick, and it was meant for him, you know. And and again, like I said, how can you ignore the fella he was standing beside and his journey to who he became? You just can't. He defined an era of wrestling, and that's my four.
Excellent, great picks. Dane, let's have him.
I regret to inform you is that my four are the exact same as Jay's.
Whoa! Really?
Yeah. So, like, you guys, you aren't much older than me, but as I was saying to Niall before we came on, like, you would be more like the really, really, like, Niall always goes on about the NWA, like that's his dog. So, like, I only came into wrestling kind of like 1991 as a kid, like, just didn't know anything, but developed that more like probably around 95, 96. But like, remember the four teams that, like, my dad showed me videos of two, which were Doom and the Steiners. I'd seen a few bits and pieces on the Road Warriors, but the Doom and the Steiners, like, I'm not going to really add much onto what Jay said about Doom. Like, he kind of said it all there. But my dad showed me two matches. The match with Ric Flair and Arn Anderson at Halloween Havoc, and Bam Bam and Vader in the Tokyo Dome. And I was just mesmerized. Like, yeah, just watching, like, at the time you didn't know what it was. It was just these big guys, but they just everything about them, especially when you throw in Ric Flair and Anderson into the mix and all. Do you know what I mean? Like Ron Simmons, look why he turned out to be in my later years. But everything that Jay said, couldn't agree more. Steiners, like, they caused a decade of destruction.
They were wrecking balls.
Let's be realistic. They were the top duo in WCW. Triple Crown champions, WCW US, WCW World, and the IWGP titles. I think they're the only team ever to do it. Like, that amateur amateur wrestling background, stuff like that, the power and agility, like, just a shame that when they went up to the WWE that they didn't turn out to be main eventers like they were in WCW. They didn't get the all the credit they got back in WCW when they went up. So yeah, so Doom and the Steiners, the Hollywood Blondes, just I actually loved Brian Pillman more than Austin.
Yeah.
Obviously, he passed away, but I just loved this persona when he was with the Hart Foundation. I loved the loose cannon, the whole Brian Pillman's got a gun thing. That just eluded him. That was his whole career. He never changed. You know what I mean? He was always that loose.
I think it's great about him, really, isn't it? When you think about there's times when we look at men who passed young and we add a lot more to them than there was there. We'll remember them fondly. They mightn't be as great as they were, but with Pillman, you don't have to add on. He was that fucking hot. You remember him fondly for a reason. He was so fucking believable and he was so talented. You know? Sorry, Dean. Sorry for interrupting you.
No. I'm glad you jumped in there. Like you could talk for days about him. It's obviously a shame he passed away, but I do think had he got a bit of a push, he could have ended up at like as big as Steve Austin was, like as Stone Cold was, because like there was nothing. I believe that's the way he was outside of wrestling as well. He just didn't come across a guy where he just switched on and off. You know what I mean? He lived that persona, and like you got to give him credit for that. Steve Austin. Need to say any more to what Jay said? Like look what he's achieved his whole career. Same as Brian Pillman. He that arrogance, that fucking I don't give a fuck. In a time where there was a couple of big singles competitors out there and big tag teams as well, they held their own. And then the last one, obviously, we said it before the show, Noel, the Road Warriors. Like, just what can you say? The most dominant tag team in sports entertainment history, in my opinion. That's a fact. Like the brute force, the shaved hairs, like they were scary looking, post-apocalyptic motherfuckers. Like for a kid, I was probably 8, 9, or 10 when like I started like tunnel vision on them guys, and I'd be going into school and I'd be like, someone's getting pummeled today. And more often than not, the principal had to come to visit the mother. But they had everyone's attention, intimidating appearance, complete another carnage in the ring. Paul Ellering is the manager. He suited them down to a T. He was one of the best to ever do it. Like the great matches like the Midnight Express, Harley Race, and Stan Hansen, Steiner, Sting, and Dusty. You could talk for days about these guys, but we've all had our opinion on them so far. So, Noel, it's over to you to finish the piece.
Yeah, I went back and I looked at a load of NWA this week, and I was going back looking at Jim Crockett Cups and all that kind of stuff, the Memorial Cups and all that. I went back through the list, and of course, the Road Warriors obviously would be on my list. I was a huge fan of the Road Warriors back then. And, the whole Mad Max influence and all that kind of thing at the time. And I remember an incident, I looked back on it the other day there. It was the Road Warriors had just come back from All Japan. They had won the All Japan tag belts. And I remember this is where they were starting the feud with the Four Horsemen. And I remember Arn and Tully came out and said, they put a bit of slide on a promo and said, sure, they went over to Japan and won those belts off the little people. And I remember Animal pulling a promo after that, and he turned around and he said, you call these people the little people. One guy was 6'4", 300 pounds, and the other guy was a decorated retired sumo wrestler. And he says, if you call these guys the little people, and I just thought it was brilliant looking back on that, So the Road Warriors would be on my list and beyond most people's tag team list. The others I had crossover with, and naturally I had the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. Naturally, I had the Steiner brothers and the Rock and Roll Express. Little story to the Rock and Roll Express. Myself and Dino were over at the WrestleCon for the New York Mania, and we were chatting away to the Rock and Roll Express outside one of the rooms. Two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, so down to earth. And even at this age, don't look very different than what they did back then. They still have the mullets. Robert Gibson still pretty much looks the same. And these boys can actually still go. I don't know if you've seen some of their recent stuff on the indie circuit,
They were on NWA Power. They had a little mini series on Power.
Yeah, and they haven't missed a beat, and they're still as revered and as loved. There's the picture there of us with the rock and roll, and just two cool guys. Great time, you know. But I'll throw in a couple of others because there was a bit of crossover. So I wanted to mention one that'd be near and dear, Jake, to your heart, the Midnight Express, the other Midnight Express with Paul Jones, which would have been our main man, Rick Rude, and Manny Fernandez. What a tag team. And if there was ever poles apart in two guys coming together as a tag team, and of course, we always revere on tag teams, you know, having the same ring gear and entrance music and a kind of a style and a cadence and a look to them. These guys couldn't be further apart. But absolutely brilliant workers. Obviously, everyone knows what Rick Rude went on to become and stuff like that. He was
perfection.
Standing and perfection. And Manny Fernandez as well was a very, very good worker. But he was also a brilliant mic man as well. He had that harsh sort of way of coming across a promo. So I said I'd mention them. Naturally, I'm going to mention the superpowers, obviously, Dusty and Nikita. I couldn't kind of leave that out, especially at the time when it formed. You were in the height of this whole superpower thing between the old Soviet Union and America at the time. So it was kind of groundbreaking at the time as well that they would put it out there, you know. And of course, the other ones I have to mention as well, and I really couldn't leave them out, was really the Freebirds. I thought they've had their place in tag team wrestling and stuff like that. And I thought they were, again, outstanding. And I know a lot of their good work happened down in the Texas region and stuff like that and all, where they were revered. But obviously in the NWA as well. Very, very good. So they're the kind of ones that I had on the list. I didn't want to do too much crossover, but I thought they were ones that were due mention.
Yeah.
But yeah, some great lists there, guys. I mean, that's a serious Mount Rushmore in itself there, you know what I mean? And I like the Hollywood Blondes one, you know. I still can't get used to Austin for hair, you know. It's just, when you look back on the old stuff, it's weird. Like.
Yeah, it looks like a Mr. Potato Head. You know the way just there's something stuck on him. It's like, that doesn't belong on you.
It kind of looks as if he was Stone Cold Steve Austin's twin brother or something like that. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
And I like obviously the entrance of Doom there as well. I think that they're Harlem Heat as well. They're really good picks, you know.
Well, they're almost with the Dooms and the Harlem Heats. I found I was very tempted to add Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, but more so for their promo work and charisma. And there's almost a legacy, and not just because of the obvious coincidences. There's almost a legacy of that with the Doom and the Harlem Heat that makes them so easy to watch. Like there's a fluid communication, even in expression, and it's beautiful to watch. Like, but
I think that's why we love tag team wrestling. Joe alluded to it earlier as well. We like tag teams to have that kind of connection, but be a tag team and look like a tag team. Don't look like you were thrown together. Don't look like it's both your entrance music and different ring gear. And, you know, even the way you work in the ring, work as a team as opposed to two individuals. But yeah, that's what we love about it, you know.
Yeah, and again with the WCW, what I was going to mention as well is what we found really hard was any variable connection or any variable combination of the vanilla midgets, like you know, the likes of Benoit, Malenko, or Saturn, and anybody. There was about 15 variables from the WCW the latter days that I couldn't pick. I'm like, I'm not picking. These men are 4; they're not 2. You know, that it's that interchangeable, like you just said. The communication between them, the fluidity, the symbiosis of tag. I love tag wrestling. Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Well, it's one thing we often say on the episodes as well is we'd love to see the 6-man belts coming back, which would be kind of cool. You know, I used to love those 6-man belts, because you could get any combination. You know,
is that the free word rule?
Yeah, pretty much. So let's move on. Let's go for WWF now. And Dane, we'll let you kick us off here with WWF this time.
Yes.
I was going to call it and say I was going for a piss there, but okay, I'll go. So first one, I had loads wrote down. Kind of going back over me childhood, and first one that I came up with was the Hart Foundation, Bret and Neidhart. But loads of shit wrote down on them. They were kind of Bret was.
I believe you.
Bret Brett was always my favorite wrestler. So whatever he did, you could have put him fucking as a bin man. I probably would have followed him through his career to see how he was getting on. But
that gimmick was taken
by a couple of people.
Hogan.
Duke the dumpster, boys.
We know.
For me, like they obviously were around the 80s and stuff like that. But as I said, when I kind of really got into wrestling, it was more the early days. It was WCW and stuff that my dad had shown me. But coming into like 95, well, SummerSlam 92 was when I started kind of getting fully aware. But like as a tag team, the Hart Foundation, for me, they symbolise tag team excellence in like the late 80s, early 90s, and like the family connection, like they gelled instantly, obviously. And then Jimmy South going around with the megaphone, marching out, banging out the orders, you know what I mean? Like anything Jimmy did was kind of, you wanted to watch. You had fucking Brett's like his technical prowess along with Neidhart's raw power, like made them a team kind of to be reckoned with from that debut. Just a couple of things that I read up on them. Like obviously, I was too young to get it. In '87, I watched highlights of their match with Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid. Like that's probably one of the greatest tag team matches of all time for me. You know, like Davey Boy was a big lad, but he threw himself around like he was a spring chicken. Like his like that match kind of captured the whole, for me as a kid, like tag team side of things. Got rid of Jim Hart and they went away to have feuds with the Rougeaus, Honky Tonk and Greg Valentine. And for me, I just loved their feud with Demolition. For me, that was just like, I just loved everything about Demolition. But Brett, that feud for me was absolutely brilliant. I just got so enthused in that. And then obviously, not long after they split up and Brett went on to, for me, become like the greatest superstar of all time. So the Hart Foundation. Second one was I was going to put in Legion of Doom in the WWE, WWF one, but I stuck with them in the NWA, WCW. I put in the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon. That was never supposed to happen. That how they ended up a tag team was just a switch went off somewhere, because when Devon or Bubba Ray was around the early days, like that little fucking clan, the Dudleys, like it was a joke, wasn't it? Like chubby and snot and stuff like that. Like that was just like ever.
The Dudley World Order.
Goofy alternative to ECW was more hardcore for stuff like that. Devon came along, and just they were an unstoppable force for nearly 20 years for me. Won their first titles in '97, beating the Eliminators, John Cronus and Perry Saturn. Epic matches with the Gangsters, Tommy Dreamer and Sandman. But like for me, like everywhere they went, they just incited riots, and it was just bring the pain. And for me, that's what wrestling was all about. As you get older, you kind of take the whole, you watch the match and you see how people are selling stuff and taking it. But back then, when you were a kid, like that was just pain, poor people. That's what I loved about wrestling back then. Hardy Boys, there's not much you need to say about them. Two kids that hadn't got a pot to piss in, set up their own little organisation. I think it was called Omega. Done their own thing for a while, and the dream was to get picked up or spotted by a bigger independent company. It happened, you know, and to put the stuff that they did, putting their body and their life at risk nearly night after night, taking some of them fucking them bums, jumping from crazy heights, you know, just to entertain the crowd and have that sense of achievement. Like when they won their first titles, you know, like if they'd have been told like you're fired after that, that was enough for them. They achieved what they wanted. they went on to have individually, they went on to have great careers, but as a tag team, you know, like TLC, the ladder matches, stuff like that, you know, like they defined it, like an era of wrestling that will be talked about long after they're gone, long after we're, you know what I mean?
It was like a division within inside a division, wasn't it?
That then, like them three teams, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardy Boys, you know, like the three of them had probably one of the greatest matches ever witnessed in wrestling, you know, like those three, they are a generation of fans. Like they'll talk about them forever, you know, like they pose for the camera there, 5 seconds of awesomeness, you know, like you know, it's the crazy little things that we'll talk about forever, you know. All three rightfully, well, 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame now, but for sure the Hardy Boys will be there someday, you know.
Yeah.
For me, tag team wrestling was early 90s, the Hart Foundation, and then that era, the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Edge and Christian, that was it for me. That was the pinnacle.
Excellent. Great picks. Joe, I know you're chomping at the bit there after hearing the Dudley Boys. I could see you sitting up and taking
salivating.
Go on, let us have
holler if you hear us.
So basically, I've done you a favor here, Dino. I went with the Legion of Doom at this time, solely because I was actually introduced to these guys as the Legion of Doom. I'd never heard of them before they turned up at WWF, and just as Jay said earlier, just 2 monsters, and Hawk being the smaller of the 2.
It's a ridiculous thing to have to say, isn't it?
No, it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. But like they were so over. Even today, everyone talks about the Road Warrior pop. Because every time their music hit, the place just went bananas for them.
Yeah.
Just before we go any further, just regarding the pop, SummerSlam 92 when they came out on the bikes is probably one of the loudest pops I've ever heard. That was fucking spine. Like, I watched it back today and got goosebumps watching it. It was just 95,000 people like going.
Yeah, I actually have that saved on a YouTube playlist. Genuinely, like, because it's just, because as you said, Dave, like, it's just unbelievable. The place going absolutely wild, and like everywhere they went in the world, that's the reaction they got. People just went insane for them, and everywhere they went, they were successful. And they were in Japan, they were hugely successful. WCW, WWF, didn't matter. They were hugely popular.
I don't think I ever seen so many sets of shoulder pads being sold that never ever walked onto a pitch or an ice rink. It was just incredible.
I'm a grown man and I still want a pair of shoulder pads so I can modify them, so I can just sit around. Like, right, you know what? One of these podcasts, I'm just going to be sitting here in shoulder pads, and it won't be for the podcast. I'll have been wearing them for like 6 days straight. So I'm not taking them off. I'm 42. Fucking make me. What a rash.
I actually have a set in the roof of the shop.
I still wear mine going to work. I wear mine going into work in the morning with my helmet. Cycling down the road, shouting at people.
Wow. Badly.
Hornet there.
Loved him. Always loved
him.
Go ahead, Joe.
So another team, like Legion of Doom, I got introduced to these guys once again in WWF, and it was the Brainbusters, nice. Tully and Arn.
Yes.
Once again, probably had more success outside of the WWF, but I was introduced to them in the WWF, and I've been madly in love with them ever since. I just think, I wrote down here, where is it? They are tag team wrestling. You know, the 2 of them individually were unbelievable, and when they were put together, they were unbelievable. Just so smooth in everything they did. They were great operators together, and they were just utterly fantastic. I also have the New Age Outlaws, who were once again just ridiculously over, unbelievable on the mic, fantastic, just in general, just fantastic entertainers.
Yeah,
Just,
very easy to watch.
yeah, just massively, massively entertaining. Both, well, more so Road Dogg than Billy Gunn. Road Dogg was quite an average wrestler, and Billy Gunn was quite a good one. But together they were just magic, absolute magic together, and they created magic, and they were just absolutely phenomenal together. And then after, like Dino, the Dudleys, how do you go wrong? But I have to admit, I hemmed and hawed between the Dudleys and Edge and Christian. And but I had to go with my heart and just go with the Dudleys because I just love them. And I even loved, as I know Dino was talking about there, about the likes of Sign Guy Dudley and Big Dick Dudley. I actually loved all that. But the two of them, literally, as Dino said, they got thrown together as a tag team, and they were just magic, absolutely fantastic. Didn't matter who they were in the ring against, they were brilliant. They could get in there with brawlers and slug it out with them. They could get in there with the likes of the Hardys, and everyone would look like magic. And they're just fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
It's funny when you think about it, isn't it? I think the inheritors of, when I think of the inheritors of what it was that the Legion of Doom / Road Warriors had, I immediately think of the Dudleys. And it's for no other reason except for the loyalty they showed each other throughout their careers. Like, there's a lot of tag teams. There's been fucking thousands of them. There's no question about it. But to look at a bloke at the start of your career and go, yeah, you know what? Regardless of coin, regardless of country, regardless of fucking company, me and you are in this for thick and thin, just we're going to go at it. And okay, fair enough. We might have a little divergence in the middle whenever you get injured or whatever. But we're wrapping this shit up together. We are what we are from the start to the end. And that's why I see the Dudleys as the natural successors of that LOD template of professional tag team, not just a tag team. And the fact that they were fucked together speaks volumes of them as humans, like far beyond their skills as men. It's just, I think it's wonderful. I love it. Forgive me, I interrupted you, Joe.
Yeah,
no, I was finished anyway.
Okay.
Some great picks there, Joe. I love the Brian Busters and the New Age Outlaws. I often found looking at the Brian Busters in WWF, I thought the only thing that kind of didn't work for them was the fact that they still worked that small studio style in the big arenas.
Yeah, they worked that. Yeah, as you said, that southern style that just didn't mesh for WWF. Especially when they came in, you had the likes of the Road Warriors, big, spectacular, and they had the Natural Disasters, another big, spectacular kind of team. Yeah. And it was just all about flash. The Rockers were there, all flash. And these guys just came in and bet the piss out of people. That's all they did. They had them. And, they didn't suit WWF. So, but as I said, I that's how I always introduced them, and I fell in love with them then. And when retrospectively look back at their careers, and just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
I was only watching again the other day as I deep dive back into this stuff. I was watching when Ole Anderson was moving out of the Horsemen, and he had to feud with Tully Blanchard, and he walked out and asked Tully at the promo had he got a problem, and Tully turned around and said, if you had been taking care of the business instead of that snot-nosed kid at home. And then Ole open-handed him onto the ground and the crack off him, like he laid it into him. And I know Tully would have wanted it that way, but it was a sensational feud at the time, He just upended him, Anyways, moving on, Jay. Let's have it. This is going to be good, I'd say.
I'm feeling my age. Hot tag. I heard these men's spicy meatballs, and I agree with every fucking one of them. And oddly enough, I had the honourable mention of Arn and Tully in me WCW that I never mentioned, simply because when I look at them men wrestle, like you said, I still see the Southern style. I still see the studio. It's like somebody cut two pieces of Harley Race off and just fucked them together over there and said, now, be a tag team, but don't be daddy. And they went, let's just go punch everything with hairy chests. Do you know what I mean? I love watching them. I love them. But WWF. Yeah, like I said, show me age. My very first tag team here is probably something that the men have never seen before. But for me as a kid, it was just wonderful just to see two men get into the ring wearing yellow and black stripes and masks and doing the switcheroo, and the ref not noticing that these two completely different body types did the switcheroo in front of the whole world. The killer bees, man. When I was a young flit and they came to the ring, they didn't have a long run, but Jesus Christ, it was colourful. And like I said, the switcheroo. It's like, how can you not tell? I'm 5 and I know. You're a grown man and you're paid as a ref. What's wrong with you? And then you realise, yeah, that's why.
Brilliant. Brian Blair, a good friend of the show, was on an episode on Dynamo's Dozen. Go check it out.
Deadly.
Really good.
Deadly.
Yeah.
Excellent segue, by the way. Yeah, no, I love them. You remember, it was the old pants and fucking boots era of that's how you knew they were a tag team. They both dressed in the same shop. You know what I mean? Then it's the next two are fairly obvious. Like I said, this would be fairly early 80s or mid 80s, I suppose, as opposed to the men's 90s. Demolition, even before I'd ever seen Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, whatever you want to call them. I know the world calls them a poor man's clone or a copy, but I've never found that. And even as an adult watching what adults is, I get where it comes from. They had the leather and the studs, and they had the face paint, and they had the growling, promos. But I don't. In the ring, they did very different styles. Probably because one was a lot older than the other. I mean, I always get them mixed up. Was it Axe or Smash? Who was the older of the two? Who wasn't the Repo Man?
Axe.
Smash
I love watching.
Yeah, I love watching Axe. You watch his promos. The man talked. I've spoke about this before. He had a patter about him of a different era. He had a very succinct to the point. You know, when they used to speak calmly like some kind of bleeding Colombian drug lord assassin. He has this lovely vocal delivery to him that you could tell he was a generation apart from the guys who are coming up and all big and mean, you know. And then obviously the culmination of a lot of the teams you mentioned earlier on, you boys mentioned.
Sorry, Jay, do you mind if I just jump in there for a second?
Shoot, yeah, absolutely.
Just on your demolition thing, I think they were set up as a carbon copy of the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
But the two boys took it, they ran with it and did their own thing with it.
Yeah.
They didn't, as you said, the promo delivery. They weren't screaming and shouting and sweat hopping off them like the Road Warriors did. You know what I mean? They just did their own thing. They wrestled their own style. But while maybe visually they might have been considered a ripoff.
Yeah, there was shades of it.
Yeah, they were completely different. Like they really were. Sorry, Jay. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely correct. The thing about them is what bothers me a lot is people talk about face paint and like it started with the LOD. It did not. There was men wearing colour before then. So if we lay this poor man's Legion of Doom tribute to two of essentially, integrally brilliant workers from an era where there was a very high bar of tag team wrestling, well, that does them a disservice. You could easily say that about the LOD. Now, it would be a preposterous, hollow argument, but you could still say simply because they wear face paint, they've ripped other people off. They haven't. It's just a look. There's always been that look. There's certain tropes to professional wrestling. It didn't just fucking start in 1981. There's 100 years of the poxy thing. And this is again, the great thing about professional wrestling as an art. There's just this cyclical wave of resurgence of a traditional style where men will pick up on somebody who their granddad liked and they'll say, well, you know what, I'm going to give that gimmick a run again, only I'm going to modern life twist on it. And you can run with it again simply because it's dead to so much of an audience. But again, I'm waxing lyrical. The Rockers, what can you say? Again, when the big man takes a look at, like you said, the many expresses, the more expresses than a fucking train station, and says, I need me one of them. And he puts together two. Unfortunately for him, what those other men had in spades, I think Sean and Marty took to the next level. They took it to a, like some of their tag moves and their high spots and stuff like that, or Jannetty flipping around fucking people's arms and shit like that. the subtle little things that they do that other men don't, that Sean took a look and said, well, you know what? I'm taking all these moves and I'm kicking you through a barbershop window and I'm going to make these be the greatest professional wrestler of the next 25 years. And poor Marty sitting there going, well, as long as you leave me enough for a couple of beers and a party bag, I don't care. Do you know? But the fact is, one looted the other's moveset and ran away and became the greatest wrestler that ever lived. But the other's very good for the occasional tweet laugh. But again, the breakup of them, they should have been more. The fact that they never registered wearing titles around their waist in that company is probably one of the greatest miscarriages of wrestling justice ever. Like, they deserved at least a night with the belts in front of the world. But again, when you've got the Demolition and you've got my next pick, what can you do? They just didn't have, they were the right guys in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was a heavily stacked division at the time. It was very hard to get to the top.
Yeah, it was. And if anything, it's a testament to the division that when a man like Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels can't win the gold because there's no place for them at the table, tag wrestling has done being, it's cyclical. It comes back every 6 or 7 years. It's hot and then it's not. But that's like everything with wrestling. Not everything can be the top of the heap. My last pick, and I know this might piss a certain podfather off, but you know what? As long as he's already lying on his back in great pain, he's just stick another knife in there. My next tag pick isn't a traditional tag pick in the sense that it's Jim the Anvil Neidhart on his own, because the only thing I enjoyed about the Hart Foundation is his hot tag. I used to love the Snot getting fucking knocked and walloped out of that other fuck. I used to watch him getting lamped pillar to post, 4 fucking shades of black and blue, beat the fucking piss out of him. And that's one thing I'll say about the arrogant bastard. He took a great hiding, and for 20 fucking years he did, and whatever. I don't care. But you see, when he made that tag and the crazy one got in and fucking smashed and cleared and walloped and banged and came in like a fucking tornado, just cleared house. Give me that every time, man. Jim the Anvil Neidhart, man. I used to fucking pop when that guy came on the TV. Oh, as a kid, you just be there. Again, this is the essence of true tag. When you take two completely different characters, I guess, and merge them together in that instant, when the story is told well, when it's crescendoed properly, when it's just about breaking point and the fucking hands reach over and boom, and next thing you know, 25 minutes of hard work is up in the fucking air because the Rhino's in the ring and just smacking the living shit out of everything. Everybody's getting it. Here's one for the ref too. Yeah. And the funny thing about them was it didn't matter in the early days whether they were wearing blue or whether they were wearing pink. There was times when you didn't even know whether they were babyface or heel. There was times when you didn't know who they were fighting was babyface or heel. You were just watching for them and knock the spit out of each other. Tag wrestling, when it's done right, it's magic. Oh, okay. And I am going to honorable mention one. A train that never left the station. And this is purely a what if honorable mention. Fucking Ultimate Madness. When them two loke dogs got together and did 1 or 2 bleeding promos and they're both wearing the same gear and you're looking at this going, oh wow, we've got fucking Hellwig and Savage and they're both wearing the same clothes. What is this? And we never got a payoff. Do you know what I mean? We never got it.
The sheer thoughts of both of them putting together a promo.
Sheer thoughts of them sharing the same fucking locker room. Oh, nigga. Oh, it's like, I will tell you, Savage, what will happen. Like, yeah, tell him. And there's no cameras in the room. Them two are just sitting there playing a game of drafts or checkers or some shit like that. Do you know what I mean? You've got the making of a sitcom. That's like the bleeding Joey and Chandler show right there. Put them into their spandex, give them an apartment, throw cameras all around them, and let's watch that live for a year. I don't even need to see any wrestling.
Yeah, it's nearly shades of throwback to Hawk. You know those promos where he was looking at the bill and he was going off on it. I used to love that stuff, you know what I mean? Some great picks, yeah, really good picks, and an honourable mention, of course. I knew the honourable mention would come anyway. No, not dissimilar to Joe. I knew Joe would have the Dudleys on his list without a shadow of a doubt, you know. Yeah, so again, you've all, you know, beaten me to it, really. You know, I clearly had the Heart Foundation and the British Bulldogs on there because
I had Jim the Anvil Neihart, sir. Excuse you.
Well, on my list, I believe if you're gonna put the Jim the Anvil Foundation on, you have to really put the British Bulldogs on there, because between the two, they kind of made each other. And I still say to people to this day, I still haven't forgiven Danny Davis for screwing the Bulldogs out of the belts, which is one of my overriding memories back then of the Heart Foundation and the British Bulldogs, but they did eventually get there. Clearly, I had Demolition on my list because, I mean, if you're a Road Warriors fan, you have to be a Demolition fan. And, you know, I'd be remiss. I can't really mention the Demolition without mentioning the Powers of Pain. And as we go and we talk about men with face paint again, these are not the kind of men you want to be walking up that's talking about like gimmick infringement and face paint and stuff like that. Scary, scary dudes. And I always remember that night when I watched that tag team match where they did the double switcheroo, the heel face her with Fuji. It was groundbreaking at the time, and it was unbelievable. And the shock of entering the ring as heels and leaving the ring as baby faces stays with me still to this day. I've only one other honourable mention that I have to mention, which was kind of like, I suppose you have to mention kind of too, the Can-Am connection. And then Mr. Tom Zink went a little bit mad and headed off to WCW, I think, and became his own biggest fan. And then, of course, they formed Strike Force with Tito Santana.
Yariba!
Two great workers, Rick Martel and Tito Santana. So I said, we'll have to give them a mention in a tag team show.
That close. Good show. I was that close. But I had to throw in that Heart Foundation one because of the other fella lying on his back, and after him giving it the big one about Hogan that time when I wasn't sitting around. Remember when I was at the Teddy Bear?
That's it, yeah. And I remember my other overriding memory of Demolition is I remember when the Young Stallions came in, Paul Roma and Jimmy Powers. And I remember their introduction to WWF really was a match against Demolition. And I remember the boys picked up Jim Powers and they brought him over into the corner and laid him across the turnbuckle. And they just beat the piss out of him so bad that their face paint was all over his midsection and everything. And that was one overriding memory of Demolition and the Young Stallions. And they took the beating well, in fairness to the Young Stallions. They were two up-and-coming good guys, you know. And then, of course, Paul Roma became the Horseman that should never have happened. And Jim Powers sort of faded off.
Well, he was Power and Glory before then with Big Herc.
Yeah, true. But yeah, that was my WWF one. So yeah, again, you know, you're always going to get crossover because it's the one. But I liked New Age Outlaws, Brainbusters, and Killer Bees. Like really, really good choices. You know?
None of us, not one of us mentioned the Mega Powers, which I'm shocked at, to be honest.
We didn't need me going off on one, probably.
Maybe.
I think that the problem with the Mega Powers is, I don't know, you kind of never felt it as a tag team.
It was too conceited.
Yeah, well, I suppose you always knew it was leading to a storyline bigger than what it was, maybe. Would that be it, possibly? And the fact that they were stupid, they just bet the piss out of everyone. There was no contest.
It was too conceited, though. It was just, we knew they were put, even as a child, we knew, like, they're only being put together so Hogan can be a wanker, like, you know. Also, did any of us notice? Huh?
No, just what Joe was saying. They were put together to eventually fall out, big storyline, get the fans invested. That's all. That was never going anywhere. That's all that was ever going to be.
It felt like an EastEnders Christmas Eve episode. You knew that somebody was going to get domestically violent or dead or miscarry or some kind of fucking shitty, nasty opposite to what you actually wanted was going to happen. But the thing is, knows when you were picking your teams, you like, when you're going through your memories, that you were kind of leaning more towards men who made a conscious effort to be a team and had a team name as opposed to like name a name. Do you know what I mean? Like there's almost like a thing inside your brain where you think, well, if they're a tag team, they can't just be say like, you know, Shawn Michaels and Peter Davis. Do you know what I mean? It has to be like a team.
Yeah, one of my biggest gripes, and I always say it, I love Edge and I love Randy Orton, but I hated Rated RKO.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. You know, I don't want a mix of your entrance teams. I don't want you both wearing individual gear. I want the tag team to look like a team. And I want them to function like a team. I want them to talk like a team. As you said, Jay, I want that sort of synergy there, like, you know, like the synergy even between a husband and a wife kind of thing. You know, that kind of, you know, that there's a relationship there that's worth pursuing and worth buying in for. I just thought with the Mega Powers, you know, and of course, people know I'm a Hogan fan and a Savage fan. There's no doubt about it. I'm also a Warrior fan. But I think with the Mega Powers, I think they sowed the seed very early in terms of the breakup. And they were selling it to us, like the stuff with Liz and all that kind of stuff was coming through pretty quick. So for that reason, those other teams there that just, you know, they were tag teams over a longer period of time. And a lot of the breakups that you're seeing in those, you didn't really see coming, you know what I mean? It was either one guy retired or something like that, or, you know, one guy pursued it, you know, a
fucking barbershop window.
Yeah. So it's,
Still
you know, the breakups were more groundbreaking than laying the seed that the Mega Powers kind of did. We knew it was coming. So yeah, let's kick on to WWE now and bring things up a little bit more to date, let's say. Start off, Jay. You give us this one. You kick off this one.
Where are we? What are we at?
WWE.
You see, this is the issue I had with how early I went with me Killer Beast shit. When men say WWE, I'm glad you picked me first because I'm going to interim bridge this. To younger men, this might well be later WWF or Attitude Era. But for me, there's kind of a middle ground between the WWE and what I would consider F. Yeah. And again, like, we're talking about 15 years between some of the stuff I said and some of the stuff I'm going to say now. Whereas if you look at the overlap between some of the lads' last WWF offerings, we'll shoot. This is what we're here to do. I love sometimes when the unlikely couple is the couple. Like a classic trope again in wrestling is if you can't get two guys on the same page, we'll get them reading from different fucking books. And Booker T and Goldust. There was a weirdness to them that worked, and we've seen it recreated with Daniel Bryan and Kane, and I'm sure it's been done before. But for me, just how charismatic Booker T is, and just how out there Goldust was when the pairing were made. It just it was almost like the fourth wall was broke because Booker standing there looking at Goldust the way we used to look at him. Do you know what I mean? He was us on the telly. He was like, Don't even start, Booker. We know. We don't get it either. We watch Piper chase him down in a car. We don't get it. Yeah, here we are. We're still fucking watching. And that was a testament to Dustin. And again, anytime you get to mention Dustin in any kind of list, as a consummate professional, it will be a tragedy if that man's offerings to the world of professional wrestling were overlooked simply because of how erratic the gimmick was.
Yeah, the kind of weirdness of it was what made the partnership so special. which is normally the other way around. Normally the weirdness of it is what destroys it.
You know what I mean? Like there's bits where they do a promo and it's very funny and it seems like they're reaching and they get there and then Goldust will be off on when they do something and Booker's just standing there shaking his head going, like, what was the last 2 minutes for? If you're just going to be there, like, you know what I mean? What are you sniffing that thing for? You know, it was just very, very, very funny. And again, if you can't be the even couple, be the fucking odd couple. You can make it work if you don't want it to work. Yeah. And again, honorable mention, the overlap, the men said earlier on, I know it's not traditionally WWE, it's more WWF, but coming in, the Dudleys, nothing more needs to be said in them. Like I said, they're the legacy inheritors of the LOD's crown. They're just how good they were to each other, how good they were to wrestling. They seemed like genuine guys, and even when Hawk passed, the laying of the picture down on the ramp as they walked down, it was just professional, consummate tag team, and there's not enough of it. There's not enough lifers. I wish there was more lifers in tag. I really do. Unfortunately, as close as you're going to get to a couple of lifers now is something like the Young Bucks, but that's only because they fell out of the same womb. Do you know what I mean? If they weren't brothers, they probably would be friends. But I'd like to see more. What you call them lads, Dax and Cash? They seem like two men who are willing to stick it out for life. What do you call them?
FTR.
Yes, they seem like a couple of men who are they're groomed and sized up to be the inheritors of the new legacy brotherhood crown. Do you know what I mean? People who choose to be beside each other, not because they have to, but because they want to. So this is, again, cyclical. Every 7 years, it comes back. Everything comes back. My third pick was just an ultimate decadent explosion of stereotype. I mean, you take a smelly rocker of a certain age and you say, who are your favourite guys in pro wrestling? And then you put them together. I mean, the Brothers of Destruction, it was almost like a monster movie. It was like when you take two guys who are at the apex of where they are gimmick-wise. They are so invested in their gimmick, you can't think of them outside of it, and then you stick them together, even because it's storyline. It's cinematographic fucking majesty. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like an evolution of character projection long before it was a thing. It would have been great in this day and age with the cinematographic matches if you could have done some serious shit. Even those entrants, you know the way they look like cartoons walking down to the ring now?
Yeah.
That was made for the Brothers of Destruction. Like, you just think about it. You could run them up. There's movies to be made in a match like that. Do you know what I mean? We're seeing 40-minute cinematographic matches. Just put a bit of dialogue in and let the boys go through the fucking Fiend and somebody. Make it a monster movie. Make that next step progressively. If you're going to have men like that and going to have cinematographic matches, well, then take the next fucking step. And it's borderline Friday the 13th territory at this stage, you know?
Yeah, I think when you look back at Bearer as well and the influence of Paul Bearer on them, and then you also look back as well at the Buried Alive matches and all that kind of stuff. Like it was to excuse the pun, it was groundbreaking at the time.
Don't ever excuse that pun.
Great picks. Is that your fourth one, or have you got a fourth?
No, that was the third one. There is a fourth one. Yeah. There's fourth one and a couple of honourable mentions, just because I know it's WWE. DX. Need I say more? I'm sorry, but the lads. I mean, it's nice when you've got two men of a pristine prime and apex, top of the heap. Not both naturally heavyweights, but heavyweight style fucking wrestlers who just kind of chill back, kick back, enjoy their sport, enjoy what they do, have fun with it, just goofball. I know there's a lot of people who hate them, but Jesus Christ, one of my still favourite wrestling segments to this day is, do you remember when Triple H was telling Sean that he's not controversial enough, and then he just starts running down the corridor, super kicking everybody who walks outdoors? Do you mean it's just lampoonery, it's slapstick, it's so funny. There's times when you take this sport so seriously, you realise that maybe we shouldn't take it so seriously either. At the same time, let's just have fucking fun with it. At the end of the day, it's the height of ridiculousness, but when it's done right, it's fucking art, majesty, beauty, it's muscle fucking opera, it's pageantry, it's all of these things combined. And there's times when the tag division can let you have that when the singles division can't. And sometimes it just reminds you why you enjoy wrestling again. For my honourable mentions, coming closer to a little latter day, one not so much. I loved when they stuck Flair and Piper together. And if you've got two legends who can't make it on their own in singles, well, then stick them together and let them be dirty as fuck for one last run. I think the tag division is the perfect place for two old men who can't go 40 minutes on their own to go 15 minutes apiece with a couple of hot tags and a bit of outside the ring. I love it. I think that's a graceful way to retire a man who doesn't need to have a single spotlight on him. Also, if they have chemistry like Flair and Piper do, the tag division is the best place. If you're not going to use the tag division to put over young men who want to make a career out of tag wrestling, well, then let men fucking retire in division. Pass the gauntlet, pass the belt, and pass the torch in the tag ring. It doesn't have to be lay your boots down at the age of 72 when there's nothing left to do. Still have fun with the sport. Have fun with us. Use your credentials as a professional wrestler and everything you've garnered and earned across the globe and every trick and skill that you've picked up across the way and handed it to young men across the ring. maybe once, twice, 3 times a year over the year, earn some good money. Let us see you again and do something for the men across the ring. Give them the fucking rub. You don't have to lose on your own. There doesn't have to be an undignified end to your career. You can lose because of a fucking bad tag or a long match. But whatever. I think just a great way to age out is to tag out.
I think, sorry.
Shoot.
Sorry, I think that would have been a fantastic idea, but now with cinematic matches, I think that's the way guys are going to retire from now on.
I don't see that as wrestling, Joe. I see that as television.
I know you mightn't see it, but it seems to be a new era in wrestling, and it's in fairness, I like a lot of the cinematic stuff. Not all of it, but I do like quite a lot of it, to be honest. And I think that's going to be the road that guys are going to go down. Like, think of the Undertaker went out on an absolute high with that Boneyard match.
For me, a retake isn't wrestling, though. It's not professional wrestling as a live sport, and a retake, a reshoot, and a re-edit.
Yeah, Jay, I get where you're coming from, man, but I think that's the way it's going to go now. It'll be cinematic wrestling is what's going to keep these guys, keep their career going for longer. I don't think.
You know what? More power if these men can earn money off that. Like, I could only watch so much of that Sting match the other night before I realised I was watching some bad 90s Sky 1 o'clock in the morning, dark anti-hero fucking American television show. It was stupid. Like I said, I need to see it to believe it. I like wrestling. Cinematographic matches aren't wrestling. It's television, but it's a program.
It probably won't be too far away from the point where they're CGIing wrestlers into matches where they don't even have to be there. You know
what? Honestly, this is a good conversation to have. I think this is wonderful, and I'll tell you why. Because regardless of what the company leaders of these places think we believe we want as fans, what they don't realise is what we don't want and their inability to access what we do want, honestly. This sport is 100 years old and it's going to be 200 years old. And if they don't give us what we want, somebody else will. And if something has to die for it to be reborn, regrow, and be reloved, re-admired, well, then so be it. It's happened with music. Why not let it happen with wrestling? Cut off the fat, make people pay a tenner in to see local superstars, and let the whole sport globally regrow again. And they'll realise one day they're not watching the program anymore. Why? Because it's not the program they fucking bought.
Cool. Joe.
Forgive me.
Now, I actually, I obviously read the memo wrong, lads. I actually thought it was modern tag teams and not WWE, so I'm very sorry.
Well, listen, give us the list anyway. It's fine. No problem digressing on this show.
Yeah, sorry about this, lads, but I obviously read the memo wrong. But I'm starting with I know, I'm sorry. I am starting with a WWE team, though, which is the New Day. Just, unbelievable. Another team with unbelievable chemistry. They use the Freebird rule as well. I think it was you, Niall, that mentioned the Freebirds earlier. So, they use the Freebird rule. Doesn't matter which combo they use. Fantastic together. Started out as heels, but they were just... I think they were supposed to start as faces. The crowd hated them. But then, so they became heel. Then they were just so good with their shtick and all that kind of stuff that people just... You couldn't help but warm to them. They were just so entertaining.
They won us, didn't they?
Yeah, they won everyone over. They just... And sorry, I'll start again. To just say what WWE think of them, the longest reigning tag team in modern history, and no one batted an eyelid at that. Everyone was happy for them to hold on to the titles. There was no one shouting, "Oh Jesus, they still have them. Would they ever take them off them?" But no, that's how good they are. My next team are FTR or the Revival, whichever you want to call them. They just bring back. They bring a lot of hope to me. Well, they did. I mean, anyway, when they're coming up through NXT, and just their rivalry at #DIY, just some of the best tag team. Just actually doesn't even matter. Some of the best wrestling you'll see. Just completely fantastic, and they're paying homage to one of my favorite tag teams, the Brainbusters. The way they carry themselves, they even wear the jackets and all that kind of crap. And now they're Now they have Tully with them in AEW.
Now they have their own brain buster.
Yeah. I just love them. I think they're fantastic operators. They're like the brain busters and the great tag teams. They just seem to almost be telepathic in their communication with each other, and they just know when to tag. They know when to tag out. It's synchronicity. It's just unbelievable. I absolutely love them. The next team I have, LAX, or I think, is it Proud and Powerful they're known as now in AEW? Santana and Ortiz. I preferred them now when they were LAX and Impact, because they weren't goofy in Impact. They're quite goofy now with the Inner Circle and all that kind of crap. Still brilliant wrestlers, you know what I mean? But they're just, some of the stuff they get up to is a bit goofy. Whereas when they were in Impact with Kona, excuse me, and they had that, I don't know if any of you guys saw that rivalry they had at the OGs, Homicide and Hernandez, and they had Eddie Kingston doing all their talk for them. That rivalry was unbelievable. They had some unbelievable promos, mainly between the two boys, Conan and Kingston. And the matches they had were just absolutely phenomenal. There was an amazing rivalry. They had other rivalries with the likes of OVE as well, which were fantastic. And then the next team I had was the Gorillas of Destiny over in Japan. Like those guys, especially Tama. Tama's just, he's a genius and he's fantastic. The way, as I said, especially Tama, has them over all over the world is through his social media and just spouting shite and calling guys out. Like, everyone remembers the whole Enzo Amore thing when he was calling out Enzo, saying he was going to beat the piss out of him and all that. And now he's doing it was him, I think it was him anyway, that started the whole Bullet Club and Elite thing now with AEW, and it's him calling them out, and of course his brother Tangaloa is fantastic, and just together they're a great team, and I think they've won a record 7 tag team championships now in New Japan.
Yeah.
Just as I said, they're really bringing the whole social media thing to another level that other teams haven't done, I don't think. And they're just brilliant. I love everything they do. I think they're highly entertaining.
Yeah, they're bringing a kind of a realness back to an issue, if you like, and they're trying to sell it to the internet audience as being a real gripe and a real burden. So yeah, it's cool that way, the way they.
Yeah, you worded that a lot better than I did. But yeah, no, he, like Tama especially, he's living the gimmick, and he's just every time he's on camera, he has to have a dig at someone. He's always having a dig somewhere. They're just brilliant.
But I think when Tama's having a dig at someone, he's having it in the kind of right constructive way to lead to something. It's not like the way, AEW have a dig and it's just, it's just petty. With Tama, it's not petty. He lives and breathes the Bullet Club. You know what I mean? And for him, he presents himself in a very good way in terms of that. Like, it's nearly what these boys are doing is sacrilege. You know what I mean? And that's the way I like the way he comes across like that.
Sorry, that's it. That's the 4 now.
Okay, good. Dane, WWE, give us your 4.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with the Dudleys, and instead of just went up with the Legion of Doom, because they just carried that over. Like, as I said, that was 20 years of destruction. Wherever they went over to Japan, it followed. You know what I mean? It was head down, eyes up, blinkers on. Like, them lads ate, slept, and drank the same thing for 20 years. Never changed anything other than probably the way that the paint was on. But, like, at the end of the day, in 100 years' time, 50 years' time, they'll sit down and they'll pick 4 teams for the actual Mount Rushmore, the tag teams, and I genuinely think they'll be one of the 4. Dudleys, don't really need to add much to what I said on those guys. As Joe was saying, that wasn't even supposed to happen. That, by pure coincidence, them two came together. And 20, 25 years, 18-time champions, like, don't really need to say much more. Went with DX, as Jay was saying. That was fun. The connivingness, the sneakiness, sound like what six different personas that could have went tits up. That just was unbelievable to watch. The shit that the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn done. That match against Terry Funk and what's his name, Cactus Jack in the bin getting fucked off the stage. I'll tell me grandkids about that. That was just class. And then last one, they were only together for a couple of years as a tag team. Eddie Guerrero and Chavo, Los Guerreros. Just I loved everything that Eddie did. You know, Eddie was one of the greatest of all time. At what he did, and Chavo was no, he wasn't too shabby either, you know. But to have someone who was like a younger brother riding front seat with you, do you know what I mean? And the stuff that they did was I just wish it had gone on for longer. So yeah, DX, Dudley's, Legion of Doom, and Los Guerreros.
Just on Chavo there. Sorry, lads, to put in, but I never ever saw Chavo have a bad match. Never. Just one of these guys that was, just unbelievable and completely overlooked in my eyes. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Probably still, like, he looks in fantastic shape. He probably is still brilliant. I just haven't seen him in years. But yeah, I just always thought Chavo was fantastic. And he was saddled with that curling white nonsense. But you know, just unbelievable wrestling. Sorry.
Yeah, no, good picks there, Dean. Interesting ones as well. Yeah, so again, I'm not too dissimilar insofar as I have the New Day there. And, you know, I preface picking the New Day with the impact that the New Day has had on Biggie Langston's career. I think Biggie Langston, Big E, has just been outstanding, and he's been intricate at kind of pulling the two boys together. Because Kofi, again, you know, he had a decent run in there and he got a bit of a rub off CM Punk as well initially and stuff like that. So he did pretty good, you know. But when you look at Biggie, the way he came in, when he came in at first, I wasn't too sure about him. He was kind of that sort of bodyguard type of thing and, you know, the normal big man stuff that they try and push on you. But when you see him out there now and he's gyrating the hips and, you know, throwing the pancakes around and the you know, the booty-os, and it's just, you know, if ever there was a situation where you can make money and be successful by absolutely taking the utter piss out of yourself, Biggie Langston is the absolute blueprint for that.
It's not supposed to look great, but it works.
Yeah, I think he's just sensational with the two boys. I had to mention the Usos. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't put the Usos in there. I think they've been outstanding as originally as the Usos with the, you know, the grass skirts, and again, Jay, the face paint, very important for those guys. And also, I've also liked their sort of transition where they became the kind of, you know, the, what other way would you call it, nearly straight out of Compton, the Uso penitentiary thing, you know what I mean? And I liked the way they evolved into that as well, was pretty good, because it could have went sort of a little bit flippy, you know. And then obviously one of them got injured and one of them was taken off in kind of a singles thing with Roman Reigns and stuff like that. So
we're watching them grown up in front of us, isn't it? You don't get to see that often with a tag team. They have grown up and matured in front of us, and that's rare.
Yeah, and again, it's you know, it's a move set you see in there as a tag team where, you know, they've put it together and they're working together, and, you know, it kind of works really, really well. Originally, you know, to me, they were like a New Age Islanders, in the way they worked, you know, with your cross bodies and your top rope stuff and all that sort of stuff. But yet they were big enough as well, you know, not unlike, you know, Tonga Kid and stuff like that and Haku and all, you know what I mean? So they had that real good look. But that's why I put yeah, and I had obviously the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian, you know, we have to mention them. It just depends on your timing, as Jay said, about where you cut off the F or where the F becomes the E. But two other mentions I want to put out there. Eminem, I thought, deserve a mention. I thought they were a real good tag team, and the inclusion of Melina with Nitro and Mercury, and I thought the way they looked, they were kind of fresh. They were Hollywood. It was out of the box. And, you know, they really got us to hate them because there they were going around with the beautiful woman and they'd everything going for them, you know. But also two very, very good wrestlers.
He hasn't aged a fucking day since the last time, since that Eminem shit, you know that?
No, not at all.
His wrestling answer to David Giannoli is, it's like a fine wine.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah. And especially now when you see Mercury.
I haven't seen him in a long time. I often wonder about him. But again, Eminem, the rock star cliche shit, but they were fucking brilliant. There was almost a young rockers vibe about them in the mid zeros, like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought they'd get a mention. The other one I wanted to mention, I was a big fan of, and normally I'm a big fan of the bigger men in the business and the tag teams and stuff like that. But I had to mention London and Kendrick, who I thought were a fantastic tag team. And the pity about this is that most of their best work was seen on a show called Velocity, that not a lot of people tuned into, but was a really, really good show. And their tag team work was just outstanding. Paul London, it's a shame the way it all sort of pittered out really for him. You know what I mean? He was an outstanding talent. And Kendrick, we all know how good Kendrick is. I mean, Kendrick, a lot of the people around the roster at the moment were trained by Kendrick. You know what I mean? So another outstanding wrestler. But I think the two gelled really well together as a tag team, and I loved their interaction.
Again, they came up from during a very hot time during tag as well. You had the likes of Cade and fucking Murdoch, who were almost a studio throwback, but done new style. Like there was a lot of strong zeros tag wrestling or tag teams around at the time.
Yeah.
Was Shelton, Benjamin and Charlie Haas around that time as well?
It would have been Olympic team or what you call them.
Yeah, world's greatest tag team.
World's greatest tag team.
Yeah.
Just when you were talking about Brian Kendrick there, sure, when they got the Cruiserweight Championship back, sure, Kendrick was carrying that division nearly on his own. Like, I don't think he was champion, but like he was always in the mix, and he was the big name to kind of give it legitimacy. Like, you know, that'll just show you how
he was so good. He obviously, it just came natural to him. There was other men who tried all their life to be what he didn't give a fuck about. You kind of wish you were kind of looking going, do you have any idea how skilled you are in this sport? Just give a fuck. And some men just don't care. It just, what other men can't learn, they just roll into. And that was always the way he struck me when he worked. There was an effortless grace to him, you know?
Yeah.
Like on my worst day, it will be better than you could have your best day. And I don't care. I'm just going over here to smoke this banger. Give me a shout when I'm up.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
I think with Kendrick coming in there when he was talking about the Cruiserweight division, I think someone like Kendrick, they didn't pin the title on him, but he went out there and faced everyone in that division. And for these guys, nobody knew who they were. You know what I mean? Get in the ring. He was going to help you through, get yourself a name, and then you went out and it's up to you now. But he'll better to play a trade off. You know what I mean? For such a small guy, that guy could hold his own. So I see why they didn't give him the belt. But for me, it was just an opportunity for every one of those lads to go out and wrestle with him, because he's not going to have a bad match, and he's going to give you the stage and say, right, there you go, you make a name for yourself now.
Yeah, he was a very selfless worker, if you like. He was always in there to make everyone look good, you know. But yeah, so that's it, lads. That's in terms of our Mount Rushmores, I think. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Can I just throw in an honourable mention? Because I mentioned the Heart Foundation, so I'm not even going to bother with it. But a person like a big favourite tag team of mine, the APA, absolutely love them. And pardon?
One half of Doom.
Yeah, one half of Doom, yeah. But I loved these guys. I think I've had more of their shirts than anyone else. Like, I absolutely adore them. Just two huge dudes. They just went out I'm sure you've all seen them versus Public Enemy.
Yeah. When
Public Enemy in the grid position said, "Yeah, we've decided we're not losing this match. We're not going through the tables." And the two boys were like, "Yeah, well, you think that?" You just went out and annihilated them. Yeah. You know,
beat them to within an inch of their fucking lives.
You know, and
you will respect.
That's what they were like. But if you know, but with teams they respected, they worked really well with. You know what I mean? And I just had to mention them because they're one of my
that gimmick that they used to do always felt to me like, again, another throwback to the old NWA studio days. where they'd be sitting around drinking beers and playing cards, and someone would knock on the door, and the door was only the door and the frame. There was no walls. They weren't in a row, and they'd knock on the door, and you know the way they'd look at each other and say, "Yeah, come in." And someone had opened the door and walked through the door. It was only just the frame. And it was so good. And the way, and WWE were brilliant in terms of their camera work, because they made you see how ridiculous it was, but how brilliant it was. And, you know, anything that's a throwback to like the NWA studio days, it's like, you know, it just, to me, it's just gold and stuff, really. You know what I mean?
I used to love just when you're talking about that, the way they used to kick people out that didn't walk through the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are your manners? Use the damn door.
Yeah. It was just amazing. Like, I mean, tag team wrestling, as serious as it is as an art and the way it's taken, it has the ability to have so much fun. I mean, I think over the years I've never laughed as much and never cried as much at tag team wrestling. I just think it's brilliant. You know, it's like as if it's nearly a different sport. You know?
Well, when there's two men to blame, you can get away with murder, because if the fault rests with no one person, so you can literally just do what the fuck you want, and as long as the stick is good and the wrestling's neat, it doesn't matter. Like,
I as I said, we were talking last week, Jay, as well. I even missed the way they hold the rope,
the little white rope. Oh,
I missed that stuff even. Let's move on quickly then, and we'll have a quick discussion about 3 topics. 2 of them are related that came up this week. I wanted to juice a little sort of hot topic session where we can talk about a couple of things that happened within a given week. The first one that came up was Drew McIntyre was talking about WWE, you know, their new leg slapping rule. You know, when guys throw super kicks or big boots or bro kicks or claymores or whatever it is, and they slap the toy to give the effect of the crack and the smack of the move. And Drew came out this week talking about it. WWE had said they don't want it anymore, that it doesn't look right, you know what I mean? And Drew came out and was explaining in terms of the claymore kick, how the slapping of the toy instigates more forward movement and more power into the move. So it was an interesting topic that came up. I don't know, Jay, have you any thoughts on that?
absolutely. Where do you fucking start? We have spoke repeatedly about a work inside a work, and people who believe kayfabe is dead, and the fact that the goalposts have moved. I think there are several layers to this cake that need to be come into for us to understand. One, we'll call them the propaganda division or the propaganda department of the WWE is always very smart when it chooses to put one across the bow of competition. It's fully aware that the world refers to the other company as the super kick party. Literally, the thing is just fucking thrown left, right, and center. There's people slapping toys over there more often than you will at a bleeding Mayo Hooley. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's off the radar, and I think there's layers to this. I think one, WWE's propaganda department has put out this, right, all staff, you're not to slap your legs anymore because it's silly, and we'd like to work a more strategically honest product, which is completely fair because the super kick shouldn't be silly and done willy-nilly. And with that same rationale, I think they've also allowed Drew to speak up about it and say, well, I don't slap my toy, I offer my lower extremities some structural integrity, like some fine neo-Norman buttressing on a medieval church. And it's like, that's not true, Drew, but the company has told 9 times out, 9 to 10 men they're not allowed to do it, and you're coming out here telling us that you're going to keep doing it anyway. You've almost set you up as this kind of anti-company character. Do you know what I mean? He's like, I don't care what the propaganda department says, I'm going to keep doing it because it's integral to the sturdiness of my move. But any of you guys who haven't worn a belt for the last 3 years, you just need to fucking stop doing it because this is Drew's thing and we're reining it back in. And that's personally what I think. There's a 2-tier approach to it. One, AEW is silly, everything is a super kick too. Drew's allowed to do it because he's the anti-hero, but the rest of you fuckers aren't. And I think that's what's happening here with this etiquette.
Yeah, well, following on from our conversation last week about AEW, we had a situation, Joe, where AEW this week on Dynamite addressed this whole leg slap thing, and Don Callis came out with the Young Bucks, basically saying that leg slapping around here is okay. And as always with the company, they released a new T-shirt about this. They broke out the weekly T-shirt that they released. Joe, what was your thinking on this?
Yeah, look, the leg slapping, I understand it for the likes of the Claymore, or when Michael was you know, for a finish. But what was happening was that lads were throwing forearms, or when a lad was on the ground, they were throwing a series of kicks, and they would slap, 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 slap. And it was just, it became
like a Three Stooges piece.
Pardon?
Like a Three Stooges piece.
Yeah, it was completely and utterly overused. But like when, as I said, when Drew throws a Claymore, I can understand it. And when Master Black throws the Black Mass, you know, as I said, someone throwing a super finisher, it makes sense. I don't mind it then, but the use of it is incredibly irritating. It drives me fucking. So I can understand why, but I don't think they should have put a blanket ban on it. I think they should have said, look, if it's not part of your finisher, stop doing it. And just like that. As I said, when it's timed well, it sounds perfect. But when you see lads, just as I said, throwing 3 or 4 kicks and flat, and you're just like, fuck is the point?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so just on the, as you mentioned, Niall, about AEW having once again having another dig at WWE. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I personally think they need to stop doing that. They just need, as I said, they just need to concentrate on themselves and just do. It's
starting to feel cheap, isn't it?
I think it is. I've for a long time. It's just move on, lads. You're starting to like when Cody did the thing with the throne. I thought that looked quite bitter, but now like you had there the brass ring thing. You have this now again, and it's just, lads, just get on with your own thing and just do your own thing.
Do you know what bothers me, Joe, is how they jump from, here's a cheap WWE, sorry, the competition on our pay-per-view or our national broadcast television, and then you've got one of their top flight stars talking about the door always being open in the future for any communications. I'm like, make up your fucking mind, like.
I've kind of come up with a theory at the moment that I think, you know, WWE don't have any interest in banning the leg slap. I think they're actually doing these things to feed AEW stuff to make them react.
To make them look petty.
Like, is it not inconceivable that Vince and Hunter are in a room going, listen, we're going to ban the leg slap because we know these lads on the other side of the river, they're going to jump all over this and they're going to make themselves look stupid. Because if you look at the Young Bucks even doing the super kick part, like, they don't even hide the leg slap. It's nearly part of the move now in terms of feeling, you know what I mean? But I reckon WWE are coming up with little things here, there, and everywhere to put out there, and it's just, you know, I think they're doing it on purpose to let AEW just
like a bit of stealth trolling.
Yeah, just dig a deeper hole, and I'd say they turn around and they see the boys on Wednesday on Dynamite going, having to go out and release the T-shirt, and I'd say Vince and Hunter are going, yes.
They took the bait, the idiots.
Hook, line, and sinker. You know?
If in 6 months' time WWE ban the suicide dive, or as Ian loves to call it, the two-bay suicido. If WWE ban that in 6 months, then absolutely they're definitely having digs at AEW.
You can see they're just putting out these little things all the time to make
little jabs,
silly.
little uppercuts.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think they're actually having a ball. They're devaluing the other fella's product by allowing them to be so cheap and petty about things. Well, the other, imagine a wrestling landscape where Vince McMahon is the higher ground. Like, what?
See, it's kind of weird at the moment as well, because when you look at the stuff that AEW are going on with, it's kind of the stuff that DX used to do on screen to have a laugh, but they just hammed it up so much that it was really cool. but it never came across like the DX stuff that Hunter and Sean used to do. Like it never looked petty, you know, that kind of way. It came across as being part of inbred into the gimmick of DX, you know.
I don't know. The Chris Masters bit seemed a little petty to me at the time. I was a big fan of the Master Lock, but
yeah, but remember when they used to come out with the Vince likes cock thing and all that?
You're not wrong. It was like a TV show inside a TV show.
Yeah. And they used to create the T-shirt as well. You know what I mean? But it's just, yeah, But
the thing is,
go ahead.
With the DX thing, you always had the rest of the company kind of looking at them going, Jesus, they're idiots. And it was like an in-joke inside a joke. I mean, they were being idiots, but the rest of the show was looking at them going, God damn it, not DX again. You know?
Yeah, the Spirit Squad stuff and horns while going all that stuff. It was just crazy stuff, you know what I mean? And I even look back at the time, remember when like even trying to get Sean to come out himself and do the cross and the crotch chop and say something, you know what I mean? It was just they like it was stupid stuff, but it was just some of it was just so much fun, you know.
It was very of its time, but again, it's the same reason when you're about 6 cans into a couch session, you lash on the DX DVD, and an hour and a half in, you're laughing and going, right, it was stupid, but it's very amusing.
Yeah. It's you never feel at any point you want to switch it off. You know, whereas with AEW, it's going to here we go again. Yeah. So let's move on. The other point we wanted to have a quick chat about as well is Seth Rollins had to go off Cesaro this week on Twitter. Saying that Vince was right about you all along. Joe, what was your thinking on this one?
Complete and utter work. That's all it was. It's close to the bone. It's a work shoot kind of thing that he's trying to do, and that's all it is. It's just a complete shoot. They've been having a rival for a couple of weeks now, and that's all it is. There's nothing to it. That it's just to build up to their match at Mania. That's all it is.
It's an interesting one, Jay, as well, because when I look back at it at the time, when Vince said at that time on the podcast, with Austin, I think it was, it kind of sets Cesaro, like, who I think is a phenomenal wrestler, but it set him way back in terms of, he spoke about it himself even in the following 12 months. He had to kind of try, and it was an uphill battle for him to try and build himself up again with the fan base that he did have. And this is like history repeating itself again. This is like, you know, Rollins being the new age Vince McMahon and digging up the dirt. But it should lead to an interesting build up to Mania. What was your thinking on it, Jack?
We are very strong proponents of. Well, I'm going to coin a phrase now because we rope about this stuff a lot, and again, the goalposts have moved. The work is still very much alive. The fact that people think they can see through it is also part of the work now at this stage. I'm going to call it what Vince does is not flash in the pan making the way other companies do. He mortgage motivates. He'll take you and say, if you're willing to give me yourself for 10 to 12 years and suffer every one of my indulgences, sooner or later at the end, you will understand a payoff that no other company left on this planet can offer you. And Cesaro is not a stupid man. He's a very intelligent man. He's wrestling. He's not like some fucking beefy bruiser from the mid-80s who's over because of a look. You can see behind his eyes. Same with a lot of these men with the Shinsuke's and stuff like this. Vince is saying to them, stick with me and have faith in me for the long-term plan, and you will see your fucking rewards. Now, everybody can be champion every day. And I think this long-term mortgage making of a man, it's you will eventually benefit from the long-term investment if you're willing to stick it out, and don't lose the head, and don't believe the tabloids, and don't believe your fucking misses, and don't read into your own bullshit because of what the press says. Don't be a flash in the pan. If you want to be a lifer, if you want your triple disc DVD to drop one day, listen to the boss. He has a vision, and it might be for you. And the fact that Rollins is just regurgitating what everybody in the world who conscientiously views pro wrestling has seen a long time. I mean, his work with Sheamus as a tag team should have been on my list earlier on. It was actually an honourable mention. Cesaro can do anything with anybody at any point in any time. He's one of those guys you can fucking lean on when you need him. They're rare. As a lifer, that's rare. And Seth Rollins, like, he's your Shawn Michaels of the modern era. He's your golden child. But Cesaro is almost like a Harley Race. He's a lifer. This is his business. This is what he does. He's a pro wrestler. If Vince McMahon said, look, I need somebody to lose for the next 2 years solid, he'd fucking do it. It's not like the wages aren't going to be there from at the end of it. It's not like he's not going to realise that if we put these people over, they're going to look better in a company where I work. Therefore, my stock increases with the value of their stock, as does the company stock, and the man at the top will see this. Cesaro's time is going to come. That's inevitable. He's a smart man. He's a smart worker. He can work with anybody. People just warm to him. Even when he's stabbing fucking beach balls, we still say, you know what, thanks. We should have been watching the wrestling. Like, he's just, do you know what I mean? He's Mr. Everything to everybody. And also, he's a very valuable European asset. And are you telling me that the market's opening now that the Peacock has shifted, now that the network is going to Peacock, now that this man and his company have made $5 fucking billion or some silly shit like that in one network deal? People are still talking about the demo gods and counting pennies when this fucker's counting billions. He has a global investment made here with a lot of men with a long projected plan. He's not fighting battles. He's winning wars. And he knows what he has in Cesaro. You know, he's got a European champion. He hasn't had one of them in an awful long time. Not to the quality and caliber of wrestling skill that Cesaro is.
Well, I don't think we could sum it up any better than that.